The hallway inside USP Hazelton was quiet, too quiet for a high-security federal prison. Doors were locked. Cameras blinked. Officers whispered as if they were walking through a place that could hear them breathe. The fog outside hung low, sticking to the windows like frost. A cold morning, colder than usual. And at the far end of the unit, behind a metal door covered in scratches, an old man sat in a wheelchair waiting for something he didn't understand. James Whitey Bulger. Boston's most feared mob boss. Once an FBI informant. Now an 89-year-old inmate transferred just hours earlier. He had lived through street wars, betrayals, escapes, and trials. He had survived criminals, cops, and people who once vowed to kill him. But nothing, not even his long criminal past, prepared him for what was coming in this new prison. The guards on duty felt it before they saw it. A sense that something was wrong. Very wrong. One officer whispered to another, "Why did they move him here without warning? Hazelton's got problems, serious problems." The other guard shook his head. Orders came from above. They said he'd be safer here. But no one believed that. Not really. A buzzer sounded. A steel door slid open. 2 inmates walked into the unit for morning movement, men with long histories, long memories, and long grudges. They stopped when they saw the name on the wheelchair tag outside cell 132. Bulger, James. One inmate whispered something under his breath. The other nodded. A silent understanding passed between them as the guards escorted Whitey back to his cell after morning medication. He didn't speak. His face was tired, his eyes half-closed, his breathing slow. He was old. Frail. Weak. But the men watching him didn't see weakness. They saw opportunity. They saw revenge. They saw a name tied to betrayals that shook entire criminal groups. The guards continued rolling him down the hallway. Everything seemed normal. Calm. Quiet. But then, somewhere behind the officers, a door opened fast. Footsteps rushed forward. Someone shouted. The guard turned around. And the next moment happened so quickly that no one could fully explain it later. The hallway filled with chaos. Shouts. Alarms. Officers calling for backup. Inmates flooding into view. And in the middle of it all, the wheelchair fell sideways. Whitey Bulger hit the ground. His glasses broke. His breathing stopped. And the officers realized exactly what had happened. They had been too late. The crime world's old grudges had finally reached him. The moment froze there, timeless, heavy, silent. But what happened next shocked every officer nearby. Because someone in the back of the crowd whispered, "Now it begins." And the prison went dark. Lights snapped off. Doors slammed shut. Emergency alarms cut out mid-wail. For a split second, Hazelton felt like a place swallowed by its own shadows. When backup arrived, everything was a blur, officers running, radio screaming, the unit on lockdown. But something else happened too. Something that made the moment feel even stranger. Right as the officers sealed the area, the PA system crackled and a voice whispered 3 chilling words. He had friends. The guards froze. Who said that? Who's on the system? No answer. Only static. Whitey Bulger's story was not just ending. It was beginning again. Something was happening behind these walls, something no one expected. And this was only the first moment. To understand how Whitey Bulger ended up here. To understand why so many people wanted him gone. To understand how his life behind bars became a countdown he never saw coming. We have to go back. Back before Hazelton. Back before the wheelchair. Back before the prison fights and transfers. We have to go back to the beginning of his life behind bars. James Whitey Bulger grew up in South Boston, in a neighborhood where tough streets shaped tough men. He learned early that power came to those who weren't afraid to use it. He joined local groups, built connections, and learned how to control people with words, money, or fear, whichever worked faster. As the years passed, his influence grew. He started running operations, creating alliances, and building a network that touched almost every corner of the city. People followed him because he was smart, fearless, and always one step ahead of everyone, police and rivals included. But the part of his life that changed everything began when he agreed to something no mob boss should ever do. He became an FBI informant. Not because he wanted to help the government. Not because he felt guilty. But because it gave him an advantage. It protected him. Gave him information. Helped him eliminate rivals. Kept him out of prison for years. He fed agents pieces of information while running his criminal empire behind the scenes. Some agents even protected him, something that later became one of the biggest scandals in Boston history. But even powerful men run out of luck. When the FBI turned on him, and prosecutors gathered evidence, Whitey disappeared. He escaped the country and vanished for more than 15 years. He lived quietly under a fake name until the day the FBI found him in California. That was the moment when his life behind bars truly began. After his arrest, he was convicted of multiple crimes and sentenced to consecutive life terms. He was sent to federal prisons across the country, Atlanta, Florida, Colorado, each one a new world with new dangers. Some inmates respected him. Others hated him. And some wanted revenge for old betrayals that stretched back decades. Whitey Bulger learned quickly that inside prison, his past mattered more than his age. He tried to keep a low profile, avoiding trouble, following rules, staying in his cell. But trouble didn't avoid him. Wherever he went, whispers followed. He worked with the feds. He brought down people. He helped them. And inside high-security prisons, those whispers were dangerous. Very dangerous. That danger grew worse after he turned 89. His health declined. He moved slowly. He needed medication. He needed help standing. He needed a wheelchair. And then, without warning, the Bureau of Prisons did something no one expected. They transferred him to USP Hazelton, one of the most violent federal prisons in the country. A place known for fights, gang tensions, and high-risk inmates. Even the guards wondered why the move was made. Hazelton had a problem with violence. Hazelton had overcrowding. Hazelton had inmates who remembered the old days. And Hazelton had men who hated informants. When the transport bus pulled through the gates, Whitey Bulger looked through the window and said nothing. He didn't need to speak to know the truth. His story was entering its final chapter. But he didn't know just how fast it would end. Hours after he arrived, officers noticed inmates watching him too closely. The tension in the air was thick. The wheel of his chair squeaked across the concrete floor. His breathing was heavy. His past was heavy too. The guards tried to move him quickly. But behind the scenes, in some dark part of Hazelton, where old grudges survived like ghosts, someone was waiting. Someone who believed that justice didn't belong to courts. Someone who remembered everything he had done. And someone who whispered a message through the prison that morning. Today's the day. Now, back in the present, after the blackout and the chaos, the guards locked down the unit. Officers pushed inmates away, secured the block, and tried to understand how everything had happened so fast. But then something made Officer Grant freeze. On the floor next to Whitey Bulger's wheelchair was a small folded note. A note no one had seen before. A note that hadn't been there earlier. Grant picked it up, hands shaking. He opened it slowly. 4 words stared back at him. It's not over yet. Grant looked up. Every cell on the tier was closed. Every inmate accounted for. And yet, someone had slipped a message into a lockdown crime scene. Someone who knew exactly what was coming next. The emergency lights flickered across the hallway like a heartbeat gone wrong. Red flashes. Darkness. Red flashes. Darkness again. Each pulse threw strange shadows across the concrete floors of USP Hazelton, making the prison feel alive, like it was watching, listening, waiting for the next moment to strike. Officer Grant stood over the small folded note he'd found beside Whitey Bulger's overturned wheelchair. His hands shook as he held it. The simple 4 words chilled him more than any shout or any alarm. It's not over yet. That wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The warden stepped beside him. Where did that come from? Grant swallowed hard. Sir, it wasn't there before. I checked. Other guards gathered, whispering nervously. Hazelton was already a dangerous prison on a normal day, violent, unpredictable, overcrowded. But this felt different. This felt planned. It has to be from an inmate, one guard muttered. That's impossible, another shot back. Everyone was locked inside their cells during the blackout. But the blackout itself, that wasn't normal either. The warden took the note, studied it, then looked toward the dark corner of the unit as if expecting someone, or something, to step out. We need to move the body, he ordered. Lock this place down tight. I want every officer accounted for, every camera checked, every door verified. Officers nodded and quickly got to work. But even as they moved, something in the air felt heavy, like a storm hanging low over the prison, just waiting to break. Grant couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. Hazelton wasn't new to violence. But this wasn't just violence. This was a message. A message written before anyone even knew what had happened. A message left on the floor of a crime scene that no inmate should have been able to reach. Grant stepped away from the other officers and slowly walked back toward cell block C, where Whitey had been moved earlier that morning. The hallway felt colder here, colder than it should. He shined his flashlight along the bars, checking every cell, every lock, every shadow. But something strange caught his eye. A faint scrape mark on the floor, thin, curved, and fresh, like someone had dragged something heavy across the concrete. He bent down and ran his finger over it. The mark was sharp, not worn. New. But that didn't make sense. No one was supposed to move through this hallway during movement. No inmate. No officer. No one except the transport team. Grant took a deep breath and followed the scrape mark further down the hall. It led toward an old, unused storage room that prisoners weren't allowed near. He reached the door quietly. Locked. But when he pressed his ear against the metal, he heard something faint on the other side. A whisper. A low, slow whisper. He froze. A second whisper answered it. Grant stepped back. He wanted backup. He should have called for help. But something inside him, curiosity, fear, instinct, made him twist the lock himself and push the door open. The room was dark. Dusty. Filled with old cleaning supplies. And empty. No one was inside. No voices. Nothing. Just the stale smell of old mop water and forgotten equipment. Grant's shoulders sagged. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe the blackout, the alarms, the chaos, it all made him hear things that weren't there. He stepped backward. But then his flashlight beam drifted over the wall. And his heart nearly stopped. There were words written across the metal in black marker. Some deaths don't die. The letters were shaky, uneven, as if written by someone standing watch, someone in a hurry, someone afraid. Grant gasped and staggered backward. How did someone get in here? He whispered. No inmate had access to this room. No inmate had a marker. No inmate had time to write anything hidden from officers. Unless whoever wrote this wasn't an inmate at all. Unless it was someone with access. Someone who knew exactly where Whitey would be moved. Someone who had a reason to send warnings through locked doors and blackout halls. Grant backed out of the room, breathing hard. He quickly locked it again and hurried down the hallway, heading back to the main area. But he didn't make it far. As he passed the security desk, the PA system crackled again. It sounded broken, static-filled, glitchy, like someone pressing buttons they shouldn't. Then a voice came through. Not loud. Not angry. Just calm. Too calm. He wasn't the only one. Every officer in the unit turned toward the speakers. What is going on with the PA system? One guard yelled. But before anyone could answer, another message came, this one slower, almost thoughtful. This place remembers things. Grant stared at the nearest speaker. It's the same voice, he whispered. Another officer nodded. That's the same voice from earlier. The warden marched to the console and disconnected the PA system with his own hands. The speakers went silent. Grant swallowed. He wasn't sure which was worse. The PA system whispering. Or the silence that followed. The warden finally spoke. Everyone to the command center. Now. Officers moved quickly. They marched through the long hallways, past locked doors, and into the large control room full of security screens. Every monitor displayed a camera feed. But something was wrong. Every camera pointed toward cell block C, the very place where Whitey had been brought that morning. Every angle. Every hallway. Every cell. All converging on the same point. Why are the feeds all on C unit? The warden demanded. The tech officer shook his head. Sir, I didn't do it. No one touched the controls. Grant leaned closer to the monitors. There was movement on one of the screens. Someone was standing at the far end of cell block C, facing away from the camera. The figure was tall. Still. Hands lowered at their sides. Grant squinted. It wasn't an inmate. No jumpsuit. No uniform either. Just a shape. A shadow of a person. The warden barked at the tech officer. Switch to a different camera. I'm trying. The tech hammered keys. The screens didn't budge. The figure shifted slightly. Just a tilt of the head. Then the PA system, though it had been unplugged, crackled to life again. A broken whisper slithered through the speakers. He wasn't the first. Officers looked at each other. What does that mean? Who else? What is happening here? Grant stared at the monitors. He didn't notice the figure had turned. Until it was too late. The shape on camera slowly pivoted to face the lens. The resolution sharpened automatically, like the camera itself was adjusting. The figure stepped closer. Closer. The face began to form. No features at first. Just darkness. Like a silhouette wearing a hood made of shadows. But then, the face became clearer. A jawline. A nose. Eyes. Eyes that didn't blink. Eyes that seemed too familiar. Grant stumbled backward. Wait, that looks like. A guard beside him finished the sentence with a trembling voice. That looks like one of the old Hazelton inmates. A guy who died years ago. Everyone froze. Because the guards knew the name. Knew the story. Knew the connection. Knew exactly why this figure, real or not, would appear today. He hated informants, one officer whispered. Grant swallowed. That can't be real, he said shakily. That inmate died in custody. It's impossible. The warden slammed a hand on the console. Someone is manipulating the system. This is sabotage. It has to be. But Grant wasn't so sure. Because the figure on the screen was now pointing. Not toward the camera. Toward the floor. Specifically. Toward the exact place where Whitey Bulger had died. The PA system crackled one last time. The voice, calm, slow, unhurried, spoke 3 final words. He's not alone. The screens glitched violently. Every camera blinked out. All at once. As if swallowed by darkness. Then the entire control room went pitch black. Not a light. Not a flicker. Not a sound. Just the quiet hum of a prison holding its breath.